I think we'll officially get started. My name is Kevin Madison. I work with Dragonfly, and it's been really exciting to do these Dragonfly diversity cafes over the last year or so. This is actually our 10th one, so Katie's gets to bring us into double digits. And it's been just, I think personally, so rewarding to hear different stories. And what we're trying to do here is have this be kind of an informal cafe vibe and just a relaxing thing in the end of the day if you're on the East Coast, or a little bit earlier if you're West Coast, or different time zones. But to connect and share conservation stories from different personal lenses. And while you're all here, maybe if any of you without your camera on are comfortable, feel free to just wave hi and turn it on. You don't have to, of course, but it's always nice just to see folks. And then if at any time you want to turn off your camera, of course, that's fine as well and totally understandable. We know everyone's balancing different things. So that's just a welcome to the Dragonfly Cafe, and I want to hand it over to Chandler Sharp to talk about Diversify, which has organized a lot of this.
All right, thank you, Kevin. So hey folks, for those who don't know me, my name is Chandler Sharp. I'm a 2019 graduate from GFT, so I'll be giving an overview of Diversify and what that is. So Project Diversify is a cooperative of Project Dragonfly students, alumni, staff, and affiliates committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion of both within the program itself and in the greater conservation, biology, and education fields. So Project Diversify is dedicated to creating and fulfilling actionable steps towards a stronger, more diverse community at Miami University, and especially for students in Project Dragonfly, supporting the voices of URM students. So that's minorities, LGBTQ+, and people living with disabilities within the field of conservation, and fostering networking between these students as well. So I believe there's still a Google form active for those who are interested and wanting to know more. And we also have a Facebook group. So you can log in on Facebook and you can search Project Diversify, kind of a play on words there, and you can search for that on Facebook, and that is there as well for you to join.
Thanks, Chandler. And maybe, I don't know if Carolyn, if you have those links, or if anyone has those links, to pop them in the chat, that'd be great. And then I want to hand it over to Tara Chidova from WCS Bronx Zoo to introduce our speaker.
Hey everyone, I am Tara, as Kevin said, and I have the amazing privilege tonight to introduce Katie Leung, who is our guest. Katie is from our WCS cohort 2019. She is graduating next month. Yay! From AIP. So congratulations on that. And Katie, I'm not going to say a lot because I think this is your story to tell today. But Katie's been with the program, like I said, from 2019, and has transitioned in life and in her professional life, and has done a lot in the midst of the pandemic. Most of her degree program has been in the middle of the pandemic, and so it just means a lot to have her talking to us today. And so I am I'm just really privileged to be able to introduce her to you and have her here tonight. So Katie, it's all you.
All right, thank you everybody for welcoming me into this space and for holding this space. As both Kevin and Tara said, my name is Katie Leung. I am about to graduate, which is very exciting. I'm in my last month of the Advanced Inquiry program. I'm just gonna quickly share my screen, and you could let me know if you can see it. Can everybody see? Okay, awesome. Let me do full screen. Nope, I don't want to share access. I want to share the slideshow. Okay. All right. So before I do begin my talk, I just want to emphasize that what I will be talking about I am not talking as an expert whatsoever, and I am not going to speak for all members of the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. I can only just speak from my own personal experience from my life, but I will be talking about like general trends, patterns, general things that the AAPI community has gone through and is still going through. Part of this presentation will be rather heavy, so as I will be talking about the social injustice that the community is facing right now. But I will begin overcoming personal and professional struggles as an Asian American conservation with how I began in my conservation journey. So I just really want to be, first and foremost, I just really want to be thankful for my family for actually introducing me to wildlife and the natural world a little bit. I've actually never been outdoors so much as a child until I got into undergrad, to be honest. But I was turned on to like marine wildlife such as cetaceans and sharks, which were definitely among my favorites growing up. And I want to thank my two aunts for exposing me to all of this. They've brought me to aquariums and wildlife themed parks to see these animals up close. And that really just drew me into the natural world. And we all thought that one day that I was going to become a marine biologist because of how interested I was in sharks and cetaceans and other marine wildlife. However, I did not get into marine biology because I was terrified of water. And if anybody were to become a marine biologist, I thought that they would know how to swim. So I did not get into marine biology. However, I did get into conservation. I was a conservation biology major at the SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry, the College of Environmental Science and Forestry, otherwise known as SUNY ESF, where I wanted to have like a focus on land wildlife conservation. And I did get like a few good opportunities. I got an opportunity to be an intern at the Wolf Conservation Center in Westchester, New York. I had like the wildest experience being out in Nebraska for 7 months as the bison intern, where I got to study bison behavior, ecology, and their social hierarchy. And I also wanted to, like, other than research, I was primarily doing a research study when I was out in Nebraska. But other than research, like I really wanted to build on my educational skills because I've always believed that if you want to talk science, then like if as you were like studying science, you also have to know how to talk science to the lay person. So I also got into a few environmental education intern positions, one at the Five Rivers Environmental Education Center, one at the Greenbelt in Staten Island, my hometown, and one at Thatcher State Park. Five Rivers and Thatcher are both in Albany County. And all of those experiences have been truly invaluable to me. And those, and having all of the research and education and science communication skills combined, I was able to land my first full-time position as a field technician with the New York City Parks Wildlife Unit, where I primarily studied breeding birds of prey. And I took pictures of a juvenile red-tailed hawk here and the local bald eagle in Staten Island here. And that was definitely an amazing experience, and I got to study their breeding behavior as well as helping city agencies make informed decisions on rodent management, because whatever might happen to the rodents in the form of consuming rodenticide, that could happen to the hawks through secondary poisoning. And I didn't think about this at the time, but just thinking back, it was like I was pretty happy to be a representative of the Asian community in conservation. I was not thinking about it at the time during all of these internships and positions that I've held. but yeah, I think that it's just like amazing to actually be in this sort of profession, like in a space that is largely dominated by white professionals, especially being out in Nebraska. So like I never would have thought. And I've only ever really saw 5 people who looked like me when I was out in that state. But I'm just really thankful that everybody has been pretty welcoming of me into the conservation community, into their spaces where I really received a lot of support. And yeah, and that's something that, you know, nobody can ever take away. But I knew that I wanted to get into something. I really love learning, and I really want to get into something more. I felt like this is not at my stopping point, that I want to just, you know, be in wildlife conservation. At least like that was the thought at first. I thought that I would be like in wildlife conservation like all my life. But I definitely wanted to expand out more. And I've always seen conservation as a super broad field that I could potentially get into anything. So I wanted to look more into like community engagement, as well as another issue that I placed so much heart in, and that is plastic pollution. Well, actually, before I get into that, as I was like trying to expand my interests more, like I was not actually thinking about going to grad school, but I was doing coyote outreach in the Bronx one day, and a park patron actually came by, and she happened to be an AIP student. And she was about to graduate herself, and she was telling me about the program. And she told me that I thought I might be a good fit to be in the program. And I talked to a couple of colleagues, and they knew about the program too. And they actually encouraged me to pursue going to grad school. And so I landed in the advanced inquiry program with Project Dragonfly. And I started back in the fall of 2018. And officially, like anybody going to the program is supposed to start in the summer, but something got in the way of that. So I became a non-matriculated student in the fall of 2018. But I also had an early start in thinking about my master plan. And as I was like playing around with a couple of topics, I wanted to get into plastic pollution as my focus, and building on that topic throughout my projects and the courses that I've taken. And that all led me to thinking about my community leadership challenge, which is one of the graduation requirements. And I thought about, you know, creating a community science program. I was already doing a community science program with New York City Parks with the Raptor Project, but I wanted to model the community science around plastic pollution in New York City. So I was able to gather 20 volunteers, all spread throughout the city in all 5 boroughs. Well, 4 of the boroughs. I wasn't able to get anybody in the Bronx, but I had them to collect litter once a week and document all that litter. And that data can also be shared with the Ocean Conservancy. Like we were using the Clean Swell app that was developed by the organization. Anything that a volunteer collects, a community scientist collects, that goes to straight to the Ocean Conservancy to use for their conservation purposes. And that data could also be shared with me too. And 2 of the goals that I had with that data was to, one, create a more vivid picture of what litter looked like, what plastic pollution looked like in New York City. Where were what were the most common items of plastics found in different areas? What did plastic pollution look like in these different areas? And I also wanted to use the data to help support proposed legislation that would potentially mitigate plastic pollution, such as the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. And that's a federal bill that was introduced back in 2019, I believe. And also like the the plastic bag ban, but that ban was passed before I could even crack into the data. So this was this project took place between September 2020 and July 2021. That time was also the time of the height of the Asian hate crimes. So that really just shifted my focus from my work in conservation to focusing on like why these attacks were happening, like what was going on. Like this is really crappy. And I just felt nothing but fear for myself and for my family, because there are literally people out there attacking people who looked like me. And so I did have a bit of a downward turn, and just again, shifting my focus away from conservation in my work a little bit, and understanding, like, and pouring myself into understanding why, even though that I was still so overwhelmed, like I was going through some vicarious trauma. Thankfully, like nothing bad has happened to me or anybody who I know, but still just reading up on the news and watching what was happening, just keeping track throughout the country of these attacks, it just became really overwhelming. So I just dedicated some time, and I was the main national headline that came out was the shootings at the spas and salons in Atlanta, where 9 people unfortunately were shot and killed. Most of them were Asian women. That was the main thing that, like, you know, brought me back to so many bad memories in my life, that when I was going through racism and sexual harassment, unfortunately, mostly through grade school. I never told anybody about my stories, but, like, you know, I thought that that was in the past, it's long gone, but, you know, they just came bubbling up. So I had to, like, really just reflect on them a lot more and again, and just understanding, like, how that was connected to the shootings and the other hate crimes. And the majority of hate crimes are actually towards Asian women. A lot of them, of course, a lot of the attacks are towards the elderly, but the majority is still towards Asian women. So I further educated myself as to why this is happening. And before I get more into that, and I just want to talk about a little bit about how this was, like, affecting me as I was, like, working on my projects and when I was in parks. So this is an image that I took when I was doing some raptor monitoring in a park in Queens. I saw this man of Asian descent, and he was carrying around this golf club. You can't really see it that well, but what he is holding is a golf club. And I was thinking to myself, there can't be any other reason why he would carry that around except for protecting himself should something happen. And I took this photo back in the summer, I think it was summer last year. And just, you know, seeing that, I was thinking to myself, this is really sad. Like, we should not have to be protecting ourselves at the level that we are trying to protect ourselves now. And even as I was out there, like, I just became much more aware of my surroundings. Generally in parks, I felt safe, like nothing has really happened. But even so, it doesn't matter, like, how populated a park is or how peaceful it seems. Like, I just had to watch my back the entire time. So even when I was on my binoculars watching hawks, like, I had to, like, put my binoculars down a little bit each time in order to, like, look around to see that nothing sketchy or serious was happening. And I also was trying to look out for this gentleman and other people of AAPI descent too, because at that point I'm like, anything can happen to anybody, including me and including the people around me right now. So I just gotta watch out. So with that, I just want to emphasize that AAPI hate and violence did not start in 2020. Though the previous president's rhetoric and insistence on naming the virus rather racist terms did fuel and escalate the crimes, you would hear some of the same sentiments being said today, back when we first stepped into this country. So back then you would hear things like that Asians are like dirty, filthy, diseased, devilish, weak, unassimilable, not totally American. And all of these qualities just made them inferior and less human, and can therefore just be attacked, like either vocally or physically. And there was also like a fear that we were taking away jobs. But the reasons why we came here, and I'm only just generally saying this again, the reasons why we came here was to not like make or seek trouble at all. It was to find an opportunity and to support our families, giving our families a better life. And we've largely kept our heads down and tried to stay quiet and just make our living. Even with the recent hate crimes, AAPI are actually still underreporting them. And that's possibly because like we don't want to make any fuss. Another reason being could because like some of the victims struggle with the English language, especially the more recent immigrants. And but there have been times in which we did have to raise our voice, not stay silent, in order to speak up for ourselves when no one else seemed to be rushing to our aid and supporting us. So pretty much we've largely been fighting for ourselves and building up our communities because we have no other choice but to. And even after like so many protests and statements that we too belong here, like even after like several generations of AAPI having already lived in this country, we are still seen as perpetual foreigners who can be told to go back to our countries, when in actuality, many of us were born here. To this day, I still receive the grand old question, where are you from? I'm from Staten Island, New York. No, but where are you really from? And I'm first generation born American. And I've also received non-Asian people trying to speak Mandarin to me, even though that my family speaks a totally different dialect. And Chinese is a dual language of mine. I spoke Chinese and English when I was growing up. Unfortunately, however, I did lose much of my ability to speak Chinese after the first grade in order to, I guess, fit into American society. Now, whenever people think about Asians, like they usually think of East Asian, so Chinese, Japanese, Korean. And people don't generally think about like that we are actually in fact like 40 different ethnicities with hundreds of languages and dialects, each with our own stories and cultures and heritages. And all of us were for the AAPI people that were here, like we were all trying to make it in America, that we have classically called the land of the free, the land of opportunity. But with that, like how people may generally see us as like all one and the same, we have our own diversity. We've also received sentiments that like that all of us are smart and we're all successful. So enter the model minority myth. Asians have largely been seen as the model minority, suggesting that we are all smart and successful, that we don't really have problems to deal with. And even if there are problems, we can get out of it pretty fast and just come out on top. When in actuality, we also do struggle with a lot of things. There are those in our community who do struggle with finances, economic pressures, poverty, being gentrified, being dependent on welfare, and struggling with depression and mental health issues, other mental health issues. And so people can think that because we are AAPI, we hardly have any problems compared to other communities. And so there's like absolutely no need to report about AAPI problems because they always come out on top and are practically adjacent to white people. Thus, we are sometimes called white adjacent and can have as much power and privilege to white people. But this completely overlooks our very own stories. people are not really seeing the perspectives of AAPI, and this places so much pressure on the community, as we can be expected to like excel in so many areas. And this goes back to the classic, oh, she's Asian, so she must be smart. And that's something that I received all throughout my grade school years. But this, I'm just going to be very completely honest here. Like, I was never great at school, and I'm not great at math, and I'm very sorry. Statistics still scare me. And yeah, Kevin, I know that you put out so many stats tutorials, and I have watched a few of them. They were really super helpful, but just by looking at stats, it still scares me. I'm going to be completely honest about that. Even in undergrad, I actually received less than a 3.0 average, and that was something that I cried over, despite me doing so much better gradually after my freshman year. The model minority myth is also detrimental to other communities of color, because that pretty much suggests to them, like, why can't you be more like Asians? Why can't you be as successful as them? Like, they made it. But so this really just drives a wedge between the Asian community and other communities. And it's just like, not, this comes from a place of scarcity, I believe. And it just also places unnecessary pressure on everybody. And again, we're just not hearing stories from everybody. Also, generally in Asian cultures, not only are we receiving pressures from society, we do receive pressures from within our own community. And there is a huge emphasis on hard work and education, both, like, you know, really good values. There's definitely nothing wrong with having those values. And these two are definitely deeply embedded in many families. But we have experienced like pressures from families too. And it's like, it's how these values are brought forward generation after generation that could pose a problem. There are expectations that we as children have to meet. And I felt a huge need to, to meet all of these expectations, such as getting A grades or studying and working on homework more so than playing, and putting the needs of other first, especially since, I'm female, and, it's usually expected that, I put others first. I then ended up being a person who just gets really hard on herself and feel like that I'm failing because I'm not meeting these expectations. So of course I would say to myself that I'm not good enough, and I don't ever put myself on a pedestal, because I was afraid that I would just get knocked down, and I don't ever really want to put myself on a pedestal anyway, because I don't like spotlights. So this is a bit of a challenge for me as I'm talking to all of you right now. But yeah, that's like the narrative that I've had, and I've never been so aware of it until coming into my undergrad years, when I had a bit of a culture shock, growing up in a suburb in New York City and being placed into the outdoors when I was in college. That just opened a whole new world for me, and I felt like, I don't belong here. What am I doing? This is so hard. Yeah, I just don't know what I'm doing. But it definitely became easier after, my freshman year, and I did have a lot of support, becoming a part of the conservation community. And I felt like I really jived with the people in conservation well, like a hell of a lot better than I would with people in my, elementary, middle school, high school years, where I did receive a lot of hate, unfortunately. But then these past couple of years during COVID, really made me reflect a lot more. And I started to break generational trauma and standards. And I'm able to do this without even hurting anybody, really, and without hurting my culture and, my heritage and all that. And to be clear, I'm not putting any onus on, my family or families in general, because it may have been because how their families have taught them and how their families before them have taught them. But I have the opportunity to break those standards and also break the model minority myth, because I'm now so aware of it, studying up on it, and just it is still challenging to do so. There's not really any sort of magical formula that I can share with anybody, because there isn't. It's just all about being aware, acknowledging where you are, and finding the next steps for yourself and how you can break these, and make and potentially make life like better, like after you, for the people after you. This definitely like made me take a longer look at how I work in the conservation field, which by the way, like my family has been super supportive of. I never received "you're either a doctor, lawyer, or engineer" talk. They actually just let me go for what I was passionate about. So I'm always like very thankful that that they gave me that type of support. I am not going to lie that I still struggle with overworking, and you may even call me like a workaholic or a perfectionist, because how much time I get, how much time I spend on getting things right and done on time, including when I'm working on anything conservation related, such as a research project or a service project or a community event. Like I'm working on something significant that can involve like hundreds of people, like many people. 100, I just kind of exaggerated right there, but but you get my drift. Because I feel like that my main purpose is to involve as many people as possible in conservation and getting them to care about the environment, and I don't want to mess that up. So I prided myself in having good work ethic and studying harder, longer than my fellow peers, but not paying attention to my own physical and mental health has really made me reevaluate like all of this. Again, it's like still challenging to do sometimes, and I'm still trying to break out of it. But this is what I'm going through. And health overall, I found is like a super important asset to everybody really, because without it, then you're not going to be able to like function as well, which I'll explain a little bit more in the next slide. So again, we're more than just being smart and successful. We are more than just our entertainment, like K-pop or Japanese anime or Asian drama series. We also do struggle with mental and emotional health. We struggle with a lot of things, and we're very much as human as anybody else. We are our own cultures, and we are not one and the same. And we celebrate that. I definitely celebrate that. So as I was like studying up on everything, and that was what was keeping me up at night. It was not climate change or plastic pollution. It was everything that was going on that was happening towards the AAPI community, and like fearing for my health and safety as well as that of my family's. With the hate crimes coupled with COVID-19 anxiety and the stresses that came with them, I was really questioning like why things were just going the way as they were, why this is all like business as usual still. Can't anybody see we have social injustices going on as well as huge human health issues? I actually felt like I was losing motivation and my joy for my professional career and in my academic career, to be honest. Not only that, like I felt like I was losing drive in again, like completing part of my master plan, like my community leadership challenge with the community science program. And, with that, I felt like I was losing passion, I was losing passion for my conservation work, which was very problematic for me because I was never one who would feel such a way. I also felt quite a bit of guilt for not completing the work that I indicated that I was going to complete. I also felt a bit of guilt just taking a step out of conservation work when there is still so much to be done. And another thing though was like, I felt a lot of unhappiness being in my previous position. I'm in a new position now, but as I was in my previous position, I was feeling very unhappy, like less fulfilled. I felt like I was stagnant and not growing. And, you know, as a person, like I'm always looking for growth and seeing like what my next steps are. So I really had to talk to a few people, both professional and personal, who understood me the best to help me reflect on, you know, what was going on with me. So I was the one person who kind of like probably knocked it out of the park was my former supervisor in Nebraska. As I was talking to him about what was going on, and I was also talking to him about my master plan, he did know that there was still passion in my voice. So he thought that it was probably not because I'm losing passion. It was because I needed I needed a change of pace. I needed a different thing to focus on. I needed a different position. And I was also, you know, as I was like thinking about it, you know, much of what I was doing was research. And in my previous position, it was like, I have no idea what's going on. Like the research that I was doing, it was like nobody knew like how to carry out the research. And this is also in a city position. And I felt like being in the city and doing like a research project that's not really meshing well. And also there was not really any, I also felt that there was more emphasis on the work rather than people's own health. So I really saw that as I was like going through, as I was like nearing the end of my position. And so I just took the break from research, and I wanted to go into something that, you know, that really talked to the masses more, so to speak. I wanted to become more involved in community engagement and environmental advocacy, both of which actually spoke more true to my master plan and to my purpose. If I wanted to involve more people in conservation, I think that's where I really wanted to go into. So came to a point when I finally switched jobs within my career. And I wanted to find a better balance, like for myself as a human being and for my own physical and mental health. So I left the previous position, and now I am the volunteer and outreach coordinator with Riverkeeper. And I've been finding that there is a huge effort to prioritize people's health and well-being, as well as acknowledging struggles. And stepping into Riverkeeper actually gave me a whole new opportunity to continue with my purpose. And I found that it was much easier to move forward with my master plan. I think that there's a potential for me to really continue my master plan beyond AIP through my new position. So an example is like, I'm working on the Riverkeeper Sweep, which is Riverkeeper's largest annual day of service, in which we're going to have over 100 different sites established throughout New York City and the Hudson River Valley, and getting people, potentially like over 2,000 people, out to the Hudson River watershed, the estuary, and in which they can be involved in either a cleanup, and invasive species removal, and native tree planting. And it's all happening on like this coming, not this coming, but Saturday, May 7th. So I'm very excited that, you know, that's going to happen. And the data that we collect from the cleanups, we're definitely going to like include it in our database, as we have been for the past years that the sweep has been active. So, and we have also used the data to help support legislation such as the plastic bag ban, which in New York State, which did go into effect back in October 2020. So I'm very excited to be part of this effort, and that really is a surefire way of continuing my master plan beyond AIP. So, and great news is that I can really safely say, like, my passion is back. Even though that was not really gone in the first place, but I've definitely felt a lot more of it. I feel a lot more of it returning to me now. And preparing for the sweep has really kept me on my toes, and it really just like, even though that I still acknowledge that the heat currents are still going on, it really did like bring me out of the funk that I was in. So that's really great to me. So yeah, I think like as like part of the conclusion, I really just can't stick with one thing throughout my life. Like I just want to expand and see what else I can do to help my community, see what else I can do within the conservation community. And I think as long as my goals and my purpose are consistent, I can't really go wrong with where I end up. Some things that I have learned that I still struggle with, to be honest, but I think I am overcoming slowly but surely, is that being perfect is not important. Like, I wanted to be allowed to mess up. I want to allow myself to mess up, because that's how we pretty much learn. I've always grown up bashing myself for making mistakes and quote unquote failing, but when in actuality, like that really is how anybody learns. So yeah, I'm definitely like breaking out of that. I don't want to just be a good student. I don't want to just be a good employee. I want to not be perfect. I've also been learning like how to not to concentrate on things that just do not matter in life, such as making presentations perfect. As I was making this presentation, I was actually not really focusing on perfection, which is great. That's definitely like a step up for me. As long as the message like just goes through, that's all that matters. That is what is most important in the end. Also, another thing that I'm doing is just honoring myself and healing from all the trauma that I went through, that the AAPI community as a whole is going through, and just paying attention to my own mental health. I want to give a big thanks actually to the former Parks Commissioner, in which he was the one who shared with all Parks employees the Asian Mental Health Project resource. So the Asian Mental Health Project is a space where anybody can join. Like, primarily Asian American Pacific Islanders do join these meetings that happen every Wednesday, and it's a space where we hold space for one another, and just hearing each other out, that they don't want to necessarily share with anybody else, that they feel like that they can't share with anybody else. So this is a space that is provided for anybody to like speak their mind safely. And also like new topics are introduced every single week, and topics such as like anger management or stress management, things like that. That's usually brought up in these meetings. I've also been, speaking with those who are close to me and those who are willing just to listen and understand, because, going through this alone, it's not easy at all. So it's really okay for me to, seek help. And, that's something that a lot of people still struggle with. It's asking for help. But I found that, by asking for help, like, I feel like that I'm not alone in this. And that really says a lot, because I am an introvert, and it does take me a little bit to, get out of my shell, still more so, and just communicate like you know, what I'm going through. But yeah, actually, I'm going to correct myself. I think I do see myself as an ambivert more so than an introvert. But yeah, that's probably another whole story in and of itself. So so things that I would want everybody to take away, like one thing is to really feel your joy. And I was not following my joy for a good portion of my life, and I feel like that I'm finally able to do so. In all actuality, I was like following my joy, but like especially over the past couple of years during COVID and the hate crimes, I think feeling joy definitely just says a lot, just following your joy wherever it takes you. And I would also say, don't be afraid to take up space, because I feel like, my voice has been like, I've stifled my voice like quite a lot of times before, and I no longer think that should ever be the case. I do want to be able to speak up, and so making noise, not be silent anymore, especially since there are people out to get us. But it's like, yeah, just don't be silent. If you see something, say something. If you feel like that you're in danger, then you really have to speak up and really like protect yourself. And I think that's just more important than ever. Also validate like what you're feeling. Validate your own experiences, because this is what you are going through. And I think that that's also important to, as we are just navigating the atmosphere, the divisive atmosphere of today, just validate yourself. And for those of you who are listening to, the person who is, explaining things, definitely validate them as well. Just hold space, listen, and acknowledge like what what they're experiencing. I just want to round my presentation out by thanking my family again, because I think my family is very foundational with everything that I have experienced so far. So my grandparents, and here are my maternal grandparents pictured here, they're the ones who are the foundation of me. And of course my parents, but like I just want to, as I mentioned before, well, there are many stories of like, there are many reasons of why we're here in the US. And so I just want to briefly share my family's immigration story. So my grandpa, he was a well-liked and successful salesman and an accountant for a British company in Hong Kong. And one thing that set him apart was his ability to speak English fluently. And both he and my grandma decided that they wanted to move to the US because of the better educational opportunity that they can give all 4 of their kids. So they entirely moved to the US. My grandpa left his successful job, and he worked 2 jobs as a butcher. And that was the only source of income. That was the income that he raised all 4 of his kids on and got them all through school. My grandma, she did not take shit for anything. She was definitely a powerhouse of the family, and she kept the family together all throughout like the transition from Hong Kong to the United States. So it is without them, like if it weren't for them, like I would not be sharing my story with all of you. I don't know if I would get into conservation, and I would assume that there would be less opportunity in the motherland than there would be here. So I'm always thankful for them for being the foundation. And I'm also thankful for my parents for continuing to support me in everything. So yeah, just a shout out to all of them. I just want to end on this last slide. Now, in the wake of the anti-Asian hate crimes, I've noticed conservation organizations, and really like many other organizations for that matter, putting out a statement that they stand in solidarity with the AAPI community. But not that I'm doubting anybody, but I just question, like, what does that mean to each organization? What does that mean to you? So these are 5 questions that I've thought of, and they're just really the tip of the iceberg. There could be like many more questions that I have. I just haven't dug them up yet. But I would ask you, are you putting in the work to learn exactly why hateful and racist sentiment and rhetoric are happening? Are you willing to call out or call in behavior that should not be acceptable or tolerated? Are you willing to learn about AAPI history and connecting the pieces to understand present day issues? Are you taking the time to listen to and center AAPI voices? Are you giving AAPI a safe and open space and make them feel seen and heard on struggles that they're managing through? So just some questions to reflect on whenever like anybody or any organization puts out that statement of what does it mean to you when you're standing in solidarity with the community. So I just want to share a few resources before I get into questions and thanking everybody. Again, here's the Asian Mental Health Project link, and anybody can join again. And I think that it's also a great space for non-AAPI to learn from like what AAPI are experiencing themselves. And again, each and every one of us have our own stories. Another great resource is Asians Are Strong, and it started up by these two guys, and they're self-defense teachers. So I got to learn or relearn some self-defense techniques from them, and they're like super active in the AAPI community. I'm currently listening to the audiobook of The Making of Asian America by Erica Lee, and that so far, that is like the best book that talks about like the histories of many Asian peoples in the US, of like how we first stepped foot in the country and how we have developed from there. But Where You Really From, an Asian American Struggle podcast, is a really great podcast in which the hosts go into a lot of different topics of the Asian American community. Outdoor Asian is another great resource, pretty much what I'm trying to say. It's a social media page that you can find on Instagram, and they talk about like Asians being in the outdoors. And lastly, I want to conclude with Gray Water. So this is a mini documentary, and I want to give a shout out to Eric Bard from Harbor Lab for sharing with me about Gray Water, and he wrote this article, and the documentary is within the article. So just as much as I care about the AAPI community, of course, I also care about the planet, obviously, but there have been times in which the two do clash. But I found that I can also advocate for both. This documentary actually outlines like why it is important to understand like why communities are doing what they are doing. So this talks about the low-income Asian community that is in Jamaica Bay, Queens, and how during COVID they had no other choice but to fish from the waters of Jamaica Bay, even though that Jamaica Bay is still harbors a lot of contaminants. And this shows like how the fishers, the Asian fishers, are being treated like there's not really much education, there's not really much effort into truly educating the community. There are signs put up that, that say you're not allowed to fish here, you're not allowed to crab here, but those signs are all in English, and the people who are fishing out of those waters, they're English is not their first language, so there has to be like a better way in educating the community, and letting them know that what they're fishing from is toxic, and that there also needs to be like a better effort in educating the community that conservation is also important. So yeah, so it's like definitely a balance that still needs to be struck. And yeah, so it's important not to villainize people if you don't know why they're doing it in the first place. So that is all that I have to share. I am happy to take questions now, and you can also feel free to reach me at my personal email and my school email. So with that, I want to thank everybody for your time, for being here tonight, and yeah, thank you again.
Thanks so much, Katie. I know we're all clapping. So many things to think about. So for sure, if you want to end the screen share, and we'll just have a couple minutes for any questions that anyone wants, or questions or comments that people want to bring forward. And I see the thank yous coming in the chat. People can do that, or questions there, or just come off mute.
I just want to say, like, that was a wonderful presentation. I'm a junior in high school currently, and I live in like a very predominantly white community. And I definitely experience like everything that you have like said. I like whenever I go out, I always feel that like kind of like anxiety and paranoia that I'm like, oh, somebody's out to get me, or like I'm probably gonna be seen as labeled as the cause of COVID and stuff. And it's just like one of those things that maybe like I put on myself, but it's also like based off like what society, like what has been occurring around the world has kind of put on me. And, I like try to like tell myself to relax, like there's nothing really to worry about, but it's still in the back of my mind. And on top of that, I'm like a woman, especially I'm at like a much younger age. I feel like I just like feel like my voice isn't really heard all the time when I want to like make an argument. So like they just like kind of push me off to the side. And I'm currently trying to like write an article about why schools should give us more sleep, because I'm a teenager who's very sleep deprived. And I really wanted to speak up about that problem, but one of like the troubles that I kind of face with myself, mainly in my mind and stuff, is like, how do I get like them to really listen to me, as a young Asian American woman? So I was just wondering if you have any like tips, advice, or just anything. Like I'm open for any thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, first of all. And yeah, I definitely like feel you right there as you're going through what you're going through. I have to be honest, like I think I'm still like just discovering like how I can make my voice heard a lot more. And I'm just in a different space now than when I was back in high school. So I don't know if I truly like figured out that part and just reflected enough to see what I could have done differently when I was in high school. So it's like I would say like again, if you're able to, if there's like at all a certain channel that you can share your story through, may it be like I don't know if your high school like does, I don't know if high schools still do like editorials or things like that, but maybe like putting out something like that, like some sort of media. Like personally, I was never really into that sort of stuff when I was in high school, but I mean, that's one thought that I've thought of. I'm also open to anybody else sharing if they have any thoughts about Lynn, if that's how I can correctly pronounce it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anybody can like also share thoughts for Lynn's question. I think like also talking to definitely talking to other people who you're closest with about this, like they can totally like support you through. Like I've definitely had like great support. I still have great support, and yeah, it's like it's helped me a lot. Going like attending the Asian mental health projects too. Like I highly advocate for that. They don't even know that I'm like advocating for them right now, that I'm just yeah, putting their name out there. But yeah, I would highly recommend anybody like joining in on those meetings.
Thank you so much. That helped a ton.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Sure, I always have something. Hi, Katie. First of all, I'm Chris, and I've been with Dragonfly for a long time. If you can see us, I'm here with Lynn. Thank you so much for sharing that personal story. And that, yeah, I think in that follow-up question, actually, it just seems to hit the nail on the head about the importance of personal narratives. It seems like pretty much every oppressive period of time in history and group, one of the first things they try to do is squelch personal narratives and stereotype and simplify human stories. And when that's internalized and when that's allowed to happen, then it's just horrific. So I really appreciate the championship and the struggles that everyone is taking when they try to champion that voice. It's not easy, and I think there's so many forces, just big and very, very small, but persuasive and insidious, that try to stop that. So anyway, I just want to thank you for that. And I guess my one question is, was there anything that you think that you did at any point, any specific thing, any moment, or any education program that you were part of that you thought was particularly effective, that made a difference on that issue, that made you feel like, okay, I was heard at this point, and this is why, or this education program really helped resolve some of these issues? I was wondering if you had any specific.
So education program, is it like academic, or can it be like sort of like anything that's educational?
Anything that's educational. The line I always tell my daughters is, don't let school get in the way of a good education.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, first of all, I do want to thank AIP, honestly, because like as I was talking to both Kevin and Caroline before jumping onto this talk, and we were talking about how I was saying like how AIP like really did, like many of my instructors really did emphasize like just watching your emotional health, your mental health, and that if we're struggling with anything, then it's totally okay to go up to them and talk to them about it. So, and I didn't feel like that I received something like that when I was an undergrad. So that really that's what really set the program apart from anything else that I've been in academically. And so yeah, I'm just like appreciative of everybody just giving me their support, like my instructors included, and of course my peers. I've definitely like talked to my peers a lot about like just everything, even off when we were like off our courses. But anything else in particular, I guess just me like thinking about life in general whenever I have my time to myself. And I think like just speaking with people who have been closest to me in general, that there's always like an educational aspect like in those. And like speaking to all of my previous mentors, my mentors in conservation. Because they were definitely the ones who have held space for me. My mentors are the ones who have given me the example of like what a leader is about, that you don't have to be like controlling or like micromanaging all the time. Like that is, they made me see that a leader can be empathetic and compassionate. And I talk about this in my capstone portfolio too. So it's like that they're the ones who I always try to emanate, so it's like without them, like I don't know if I would be like the same person as I am today. So yeah, really learning from individuals like my mentors and people who I'm closest to.
Great. Thank you.
Well, definitely, Katie, take a look at the chat if you haven't. There's a lot of nice thank yous there. I know everyone really appreciated this. So, but we are at the end of our time. So thanks so much, and we'll be in communication about our next Dragonfly Diversity Cafes down the road. But thanks to everyone for attending tonight, and thank you so much, Katie. So helpful and so many great thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you.